The ego itself is simply your identification of self. It's how you perceive yourself to be one, how you are. It's the I in the sentence in I am blank. Like, one thing that I love, if we go into language and how it functions, is it shows a lot about our culture as a whole. So I can say, and how we view reality. An example of this is how we say my hand, my foot, like my mouth. We claim it as possession, but we don't say that it is us. And from what I understand, especially after watching some Alan Watts and just different videos and different lectures of reality as a whole, a lot of people tend to view themselves as this thing, this consciousness that's just right behind like your eyes. It's the part of yourself that you can't see. That's what we tend to associate with. Now this idea that the part of us that we can't see is us is something that I don't believe either. I don't believe that I believe we exist beyond this basic, like, physical, in a sense. What I mean by this isn't that we are, like, angels or anything like that. It's that our bodies don't define us. Like what I was saying earlier about the way our language describes our reality that we exist with, you wouldn't say, like, if my hand got cut off in some terrible accident, I wouldn't say that I'm no longer myself anymore. If we associate ourselves with our nervous system as a whole, like, you wouldn't become a paraplegic and then say that you're not yourself anymore. You still exist beyond that. The problem with ego itself is not the ego existing, it's the embrace of the egotistical mindset, which is the idea that everything around you is meant for your own possession and your domination over. This ties into Ryan Eisler's idea of the dominator versus partnership culture. In this, one group of people or singular person is meant to dominate the environment around them in order to control it. And then on the contrary to this, on the other side, we have partnership cultures, which is what existed up until about 12,000 years ago when the dominator culture began to rise. What partnership cultures are is they base their beliefs around the idea that communities as a whole aren't meant for one person to be on top, and these in and out groups where there are people who are either in the group or out of the group. This idea is what leads to so much war, destruction, and hate. What partnership cultures allow is this mutual cooperation between people to strive the best for the community as a whole. It doesn't just benefit this one person, but it benefits everyone involved. And it's not communism either. It's not everyone gets this equal start off. It's dominator cultures can exist in both capitalistic and communistic societies. Partnership cultures, on the other hand, are societies which seek to benefit everyone, not just a singular group of people. But getting back to the problems with the egotistical mindset and the dominate over everything else, when we let this consume us, we see things such as large corporations who only care about themselves. We see different politicians when this phrase is brought to mind. That is why so many people believe in the destruction of the ego. But I don't believe that because it can be used for negative purposes that we should discount it entirely. Our entire experience, our human experience, derives from the ego itself. Now, through deep meditation and other means, we can get into, like, the destruction of the ego, and we can see how beneficial that is for someone. But when you desire the destruction of your ego, that is your ego telling yourself that I want to be destroyed. My ego, I want that to be destroyed. But if we want to get into the irony of the situation and analyzing language itself, we can say, I want to destroy my ego, which separates yourself from your ego entirely, although you are using your ego to claim... It's getting meta now. You're using your ego to claim you want destruction of your ego when claiming that the ego is under your possession. That gets into, like, possessing yourself, and language is weird. But talking about the ego and the sense of self leads me to my next point as a whole, which is the idea of death. And I know that's going to be comforting to a lot of people, but let's hop right into it. Pun completely intended. Now, this idea of death isn't inherently a scary thing. What makes it so terrifying in our modern day and age is the fear of the unknown. But instead of asking what comes after death, our normal human experience is we start at the beginning of things. So if we're truly going to start at the beginning of this question, we should ask ourselves not what's after death, but what comes before birth. And once we realize that once we accept the unknown of our consciousness before birth itself, we realize that we've already overcome the unknown. We've already defeated it before, and we've lived this entire experience of our human existence, and we're just going back into the unknown again. That's all it is. The fear of death in Western society is not the fear of death itself. It derives from the fear of trudging into the unknown, having no idea what you're going into. It's the fear of punishment for eternity. Either way, this idea of eternity and the unknown is absolutely mortifying to practically anyone. But then, swinging back around to the ego, we are bound by our experience in this human existence to try to understand what lies beyond it. We can't comprehend that which exists beyond our realm of comprehension. When I say this, we've grown into this world that we exist in today under the comprehension that we have based upon our ego and relating that to previous experiences that we're able to remember. But we don't have memory from before we were born to know about the unknown. We have no way of recording and storing that information, if there's any information to begin with. Based on that idea and this lack of information, we can go into this realm of possibility, and I ask you to suspend your disbelief, but this idea that there is no time beyond our experience on this human level. We are so bound by this idea of time and then the nature of our reality here that most of us can't imagine this idea of existence without this idea of time. Because at the end of your life on Earth comes the end of your existence, and we're only able to rationalize time through our current existence in the now. Once you accept that our entire idea of this reality is based on our human experience, which is limited by our physical senses and our ability to rationalize time, we realize that once this existence in this realm comes to an end, the idea of time and this past, this present, this future, whatever exists throughout time, ceases as soon as we do. So it's going back to the state of non-existence. And how we come out of that state, how we go into life itself, is one of these great mysteries that I don't believe we'll ever solve. And maybe all of what I'm saying is just incorrect on the fundamental level, but that's my thoughts on the ego and death and all of that stuff. So I'd be super glad to read whatever your thoughts on all of this is. I'd love to start writing essays to each other in the comments, so let me know. I'd be curious to see how you all take this. So until next time, goodbye.